You mean you want us to shut up so that you can do the intro?
Well, you can do the intro then, fine.
I don't want to do an intro. I forgot. I actually came across the note on my phone the other day of me writing what the intro should be for you. You know, back when you were sort of going, oh, I don't know what to say.
I vaguely recall this.
And I was like,
I don't
try this.
understand Simon having adenoids.
Don't you?
No.
Well, okay, no, fine. So Sam's going to open the podcast.
Or eat shag. This is the Atypical Podcast. Get on with it.
I have nowhere to go from there. Hello and welcome to Atypical the podcast where we look at life from a more atypical perspective. My name's Simon, he there, your host, and apparently I'm joined by two completely and utterly insane friends. We shouldn't really say that when we're going to be talking about mental health, should we?
Nope.
Would you like to introduce yourselves?
Hi, I'm Sam. Also, he. Just he. No, start that again. Delete that bit. Try again. That was an awful one. Joey, go.
Oh god, this is going to be an editing nightmare, isn't it?
No, you just search for laughter and then edit it out. Can't have fun on the podcast. He's muted himself.
Would you like to introduce yourself while he figures out who he is and what's going on?
I said what you should do is stop Craig. Start Craig and do it all over again. Why did you name him some with like a name that we know?
Yeah.
What should I call? Should have called it Methuselah.
Well,
that would
probably.
have been better.
Well, it's Craig the Bear.
Okay.
You know, Craig is my Samantha.
Sex in the City, Samantha.
I'm sorry, I haven't a clue.
That's a weird connection.
Yes. Most people would jump to Sex and the City, at which point it's a very weird reference. Because that would be your horny friend.
Okay, so we're not joined by Sex and the City Samantha. Who else am I joined by today?
Hello, I'm Joey. Just Joey.
Oh, I have to do me. Hi, I'm Sam.
Anyway, so I'm very pleased to be joined by my lovely co-hosts again. I realise we're a week or so late, but there was a couple of interesting, celebration days, I suppose. I'm trying to think of the right word. Last week we had on the 10th we had International Mental Health Day. And then on the 11th, we had National Coming Out Day, certainly here in the UK. I don't know about the rest of the world. I should really check that, shouldn't I? But I thought it might be interesting to talk about those two things and sort of go from there, because obviously, you know, we are graced by the presence of a mental health first aider.
And I've just understood what MHFA stands for.
Oh, really?
Would you like to tell us what an MHFA is?
Genuinely, it was like, how do we get MHFA into some sort of union thing? I have yet to work it out. Leave it with me.
What?
Okay.
What's he on about? He's yet
What
to figure it out.
MHFA stands for, which I do now know, but when I saw it earlier in the message, I was like, what the fuck is an MHFA?
Right.
But now I know. Because
So you're not confused about anything? Because it sounded to me like you were still confused about something.
No, I was trying to understand how it. I assumed it was something to do with unions.
Oh.
We'll start talking about the podcast in a minute.
So last week
It's also Black History Month, isn't it?
It is, yes. Do any of us feel like we can talk about Black History Month?
Oh God, no! I'm completely not qualified, but
I mean, we can mention that it is. And we
I
should-
think,
we can mention that it is.
Yes, maybe we'll definitely mention that. Okay, so. Hi, this is Editor Simon in the future, or possibly the past. It depends, because obviously I'm editing at the moment, so for me it's the present. Anyway, before we get lost in all of that. Black History Month. So, Black History Month originated in the United States, founded by a historian called Carter Woodson in 1926 during something called the Harlem Renaissance. It began as, and I'm quoting here, Negro History Week. And the idea behind it was an effort to try and bring to national attention what was often seen as an overlooked accomplishments and experiences of African Americans throughout history. The celebration was actually expanded very quickly into a full month by the 1960s during the civil rights movement, and it helped to honour some of those leaders like Martin Luther King Jr., who, and indeed many, many thousands of others, who were advancing that fight for equality. So while Black History Month has American roots, it has become a really important event here in the UK as well. It provides a platform, I suppose, to recognise the distinctive narrative of Black British history. A major milestone was things like the arrival of the Empire Windrush 75 years ago in 1948. And that effectively, I suppose, initiated a huge influx of Caribbean immigrants who would really help reshape and enhance the cultural landscape here in Britain. Other big British moments, which I'm aware of, and there's thousands I'm missing out here, include the 1963 Bristol bus boycott, which is well worth looking up if you don't know anything about it. It was effectively protesting the racist policy of not hiring black or Asian drivers. I feel like we should also highlight the 1970s activism of the British chapter of the Black Panthers. They are fascinating and definitely well worth looking into, certainly in places like the US, where they had a free food program for kids to make sure that they didn't go to school hungry. There's some really interesting stuff around them. We also have really important people like Claudia Jones, who founded Britain's first Caribbean carnival. We have Walter Tull, who was Britain's first black officer in the army. Ultimately, Black History Month does acknowledge this united struggle for justice, as well as a distinct national history. Both American civil rights icons, British pioneers, are honoured. But indeed, it comes down also to the regular person, the things that they were able to achieve and keep giving us as part of it. Black history is not just black history. It is something that we should all honour and learn from. And I think this month encourages us to explore the histories of slavery, of the colonial era, and the ongoing fight for equality. I think we absolutely need to celebrate the vibrant influence of black culture and reflect on those past injustices and current injustices, and how we can continue to build a more accepting and just society. Back to the podcast. Shall we start?
Sure. Well, you can go over the topics.
So, last week was International Mental Health Day. That's celebrated every year on the 10th of October. It's supported by the UN, by loads of organisations around the world. This year, the theme was Mental Health is a Universal Human Right. And one of the things which I think is really quite interesting and important is about how we talk about mental health, especially for people who are atypical, be that because they have some kind of neurodivergence, or they might be queer, or they might have a different sort of gender identity. Sam, you are a mental health first aider in your workplace, and would you like to tell us a little bit more about what that entails?
Sure. I mean, you say in the workplace, but it's sort of an external thing as well. It's not just limited to the workplace, I guess, because it prepares you to sort of be able to help people or recognize signs in people that would indicate to you that they might need some support. It's not about being there to counsel somebody either. It's just there to sort of listen, to signpost, and be just be there for people if they need to talk to somebody, maybe a little bit confidentially, or maybe they do know that they need some support and they're not sure how to start about it. They know that you're there, you're open, willing to talk, and you it's all private and confidential and all that usual jazz. But yeah, it is 100%. The most important thing that people don't confuse is that it's about signposting and not providing solutions, because not qualified to do that and not insured to do that either. So, two very important things. Although I'll quite happily tell you what you're doing wrong with your life.
Well, yes, but that's just because
everything.
If we started at everything I'm doing wrong in my life, we won't. We'll have to disconnect the podcast because it'll take too long. But one of the things which I think is really important, though, as you sort of kind of touched on, is that whilst we all have, I guess, different ways of talking about our mental health, certain like being there and being a non-judgmental person to listen to things, using the right kind of words and phrases, which can be so, I guess, like respectful and acceptable, can help people to destigmatize the whole sort of issues which often surround mental health.
Yeah, totally. And like I don't want to sort of labour into sort of what the training involves too much, because it can be quite sort of enlightening training for some people. I remember when I did it, I certainly sort of it was the mental health nurse for our occupational health department sort of came in at the start of the thing, and she was like, "This course will change you. You'll come out a different person." And I was sat there with my arms folded, going, "No, I won't. No, I won't." And I wouldn't say that I sort of had the epiphany that she was sort of suggesting that I would have. But it definitely made me look at certain things that had happened in my life and had gone on in my life and made me sort of start thinking about things a little bit differently. So it sort of, without a shadow of a doubt, helped quite a bit with an amount of personal development, which was good. But it also, I think, sort of helped equip me to sort of deal with people's problems more positively, or help guide them more positively, should I say? Because again, it's not about helping you solve your problems. That's to be done with a trained professional.
No, absolutely. But you've still got to be compassionate. Asking someone if they're a bit down and letting them use their own words, because obviously they're the experts in their own situation.
Yeah.
And I guess we shouldn't be afraid of saying something stupid to make us stop from asking how someone's doing.
No, that's it. It's like you said before. It's about asking the questions in the right way, or acknowledging what that person's saying in the right way, and not like something that you hear so often from people, like when somebody's sort of telling them a bit of their woes and what's going on in their life and that they're feeling a bit down. And so often people will go, "Oh, cheer up, could be worse." And
yes, not the right thing to say.
Exactly. And it's like the last thing that somebody needs to hear when they're sort of already feeling down is like, "Oh, pick yourself up." Or another one that men get a lot, because we know the statistics are there that says men have higher sort of general cases of mental health and particularly maybe unexpressed issues that are going on as well.
Well, yes.
We do struggle to talk to each other. We get told a lot, "Oh, man up." Men are supposed to be men, and we don't talk about feelings, and that's a shame.
Yes, well. I think you're absolutely right. There's a sort of, I still think there's a sort of societal expectation and sort of traditional gender norms which play a role in why men are just less likely to discuss this kind of thing, or even just to seek help for it. And that's a real problem, because, trigger warning, unfortunately, suicide is the biggest killer of men between 18 and 45 in the UK, certainly, and a number of other Western countries. And I think there's still a certain thing about how we're expected to be the breadwinner. We're expected to be strong and dominant and in control and all of these kind of things. And whilst those aren't inherently bad, I think it does make it a lot harder for people to open up. But I think there's also the whole thing of for a lot of people is having the space and indeed the friendship circles in which you can do that.
Yeah, they're very good. I will mention as well that because there's a good number of charities out there that are trying to work to combat this, in particular around men that have issues mental health wise and want to talk about it. So two that spring to mind are Man Up, which you can access at manup.how, and Andy's Man Club at andysmanclub.co.uk.
We'll put links for all of these into the show notes.
Yeah, those are two charities that are just sort of trying to promote that positivity of how important it is to talk. And it's certainly one thing like that I learned as a big thing. Like women will quite happily, and I'm not trying to put down that women don't suffer with mental health, because we all do. It's just you do tend to find that women will tend to sort of talk a lot more about their feelings, a lot more. You don't. My mum's a hairdresser, so I can personally attest to this. Like, most women, half of what they go to the hairdresser for is to talk and to chit chat and get stuff off their chest, and that's half of what they do there. And I don't think you sort of get the same thing in a barber's, but yeah, those are two. But yes, we all suffer with mental health. To summarize, I guess. Does that help summarize?
It really does. Yes, absolutely. And like I say, this year's theme is that mental health is a universal human right. And the idea behind that is to try and bring and this is something which lots of people have been talking about for years now, is bringing mental health up to the same parity as physical health. You don't just walk off a broken leg. You need help with it. And that might be you need it to be x-rayed and put in cast and staying off it for a bit and doing exercises. your mental health is not that dissimilar. Sometimes you need that extra support, you need that rest, you need effectively the mental physiotherapy. But I think possibly, Jerry, you might want to come in here, is one of the things that we want to talk about a bit more in obviously in this podcast, is that we focus a bit more on some of the minority groups and things like the LGBTQ plus the sort of the queer experience perhaps of mental health. The statistics suggest that mental health can actually be, specifically can be subjectively worse amongst people with a sort of a queer or gender non-conforming identity.
Yes. So with also it being National Coming Out Day as well, a lot of people obviously have quite a lot of trauma associated with coming out, even if the actual act of it was quite pleasant, which some of us are lucky enough to have. The build-up to that, which can be many, many, many years, can leave quite a few scars, because obviously you've got this sort of fear looming over you, which everyone is fully aware of, what having the fear looming over you, regardless of whether you're gay or straight or whatever, because we've all had difficult and horrible conversations that we've had to have, and that looms over you. But if it's linked to your personal identity and who you think you are, you can't escape that. And that is going to leave a considerably unpleasant scar on you for some time. And for some people, it's short-lived, and some people it can be with them their entire life. I mean, regardless of how well your coming out could be, so a lot of people still have internalized homophobia, which, they're directing their societal dislike of queer things back at themselves, even though they themselves are queer.
The self-hating kind of thing, yeah.
You're too camp, you like too effeminate things, you're not masculine enough, you got a silly voice, or stop walking like that. Why do you want to go see Barbie and not go see Oppenheimer? The things that weigh on you for not being how you think you should be, because it's what society tells you. And all minorities, I would imagine, feel that, because it's more obvious if you don't fit into the norm. I use quotation marks for people who can't see me.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's lots of things perhaps that we go through which are more, well, almost unique to at least that experience of things like I'd say not discrimination is obviously not unique, but homophobia and transphobia, for example, that kind of social isolation and rejection. I mean, you touched there on coming out, and I think we'll talk a bit more about that shortly, because that's also a useful thing to talk about. But I think there is certainly something around the type of relationships that you might be able to form. I've had suicidal thoughts in the past, and certainly have had some pretty nasty bouts with depression. I'm lucky enough now that I have some close friends that I can talk to about these kind of things. But for a lot of people, that's not necessarily something they have available to them. That tends to be more just a male than I sort of experience anyway. Also, you mentioned there about going to see Barbie or Oppenheimer. One of them is 3 hours of people talking in rooms.
Barbie, right?
And one of them was the creative control was just given to someone who created a very nice film. Both of them are great, by the way. So
I don't think I've actually watched either.
Barbie, I thoroughly enjoyed Barbie. I haven't got around to Oppenheimer yet. But everyone who's watched Oppenheimer said it was very good. So.
Do you know what also I still need to watch, which is ridiculous? Pride.
Yes, you do.
That the Miners one?
Yes.
Oh, yes, you should. That's very good.
Yeah. Do you know what I'm going to do? Not to sidetrack the podcast at all.
I talked about it on the podcast once.
Yeah, I'm just going to... Oh, HMRC to give $2,000 lump sum to people born in these years.
Yeah, don't click on it. It's phishing.
It feels a bit that way, doesn't it?
It is.
It does.
Don't do it. This is a public service announcement. If ever you get a link saying that the tax company organization is going to give you money, do not click on it. It is a scam.
Damn. It's for
Damn,
younger
lost
people.
all his money.
I mean,
I feel like I had a point about what we were talking about earlier, but I can't remember what it was.
Mental health.
Gay people, queerness,
gay people,
something.
yeah. I mean, so there are some statistics certainly for the United Kingdom on, especially sort of the queer experience of mental health. And Stonewall, for example, found that last year around half of LGBTQ plus people experienced some form of depression, and 3 in 5 had some form of anxiety. I don't know about anyone else, but I get anxiety quite a lot. And even that, around 1 in 8 people aged between 18 and 24 had considered or attempted to take their life. unfortunately increases to almost half of trans people. Now, that obviously represents a huge amount of sort of the medical issues around that, and indeed around people getting access to, for example, trans-affirming healthcare. And I'll put a link to a very good video about that done by Abby Thorne, the philosopher. But I think in general there are huge issues that we still need to overcome with regards to mental health. I think the idea that we are making it a fundamental human right is absolutely the best way to go. But talking about it absolutely makes a big difference, and starting to destigmatize it. And I'm quite open with my own struggles in the past, because if it helps others to realize that you can admit to these things, that it is normal, that might help.
Yeah.
I have certainly noticed post-COVID that people talk about their mental health a lot, which is nice. It's very common in workplace, although I do work in an incredibly talky environment where people are constantly airing their issues, but that is fitness. They spend a minute pumping iron and then a minute recovering, telling you why they hate their husband and why their mother-in-law is upside down.
You said you weren't going to share that with anybody.
So, this is the thing, isn't it? Like COVID and lockdowns and brought it all to the forefront for people, because everybody suffered that isolation that, specific groups or other people might feel day to day in their lives that, might not have very big, wide social circles. It brought it to the foreground for everybody, and everybody experienced it. And, we are seeing, like colleague, my co-hosts have said, a massive increase in the awareness of mental health, which is only a positive thing, that we acknowledge it. And, it's a lot of people are sort of saying, it's the new bad back, isn't it? Because it's not like a broken leg that you can see, it's something that's under the surface. And I think it's really important that we mention as well that everybody has mental health. So
yes.
Not everybody has a diagnosed mental illness or condition, but everybody has mental health. Everybody has good mental health. Everybody has poor mental health. And we slide up and down this spectrum. And it's really important to sort of identify those things that help bring you back up that spectrum, that help improve your mental health to bring you to a good mental health position, especially when you start slipping down that slope or down that gauge, that ladder, that spectrum, whatever you want to call it. When you start feeling yourself going down there, start noticing the things that you do in your life that sort of indicate that you're not in a great place, it's important to then know the things that will help bring you back up that mental health spectrum. Really important. That's like one of the first things that I learned on the course was sort of learning that everybody has mental health.
You're absolutely right. Calling it mental health or mental illness, or whichever way you want to call it, as being part of a spectrum, I think is actually a really valuable way of looking at it. But what are some of the things that I'm willing to share what I do, but what's some of the things that could be done that might help to improve things for yourselves?
So things for me that I identified as sort of positively influencing my mental health are sleeping, getting a really good night's sleeping. I identified building with Lego. Love Lego. It has a really positive impact on my life. Going out for a hike, getting out in nature and, enjoying that sort of thing, especially if I've been cooped up for a while. But equally, like snuggling up in bed and having a glass of milk and some cookies, watching a movie.
Duvet day.
Yeah, duvet days, and I think a lot of employers have sort of, especially more modern employers, you do find places that have mental health days, well, that are sort of separate to your holiday allowance as well. So yeah, those are just a couple of mine. So there you go. What has anyone else got any to contribute, or can think of any that they might identify as?
I always think getting out of what you are currently doing is always helpful.
Shaking things up.
Well, I think especially if you're in sort of a downward, even if it's a very subtle downward spiral, breaking your routine can really help. And it's not always easy, but if you are stuck lying in bed every day, you go from your bed to the computer to your bed to the computer, and that's what you do. Trying to break that cycle is always helpful. So, as you said, going out for the walk, playing with the dog, building Lego, anything that can try and break up what it is in your current cycle, because your current routine is not serving you properly because you are depressed and you are having issues. So finding a way to try and break that, even one little tiny little thing at a time. It doesn't have to be, I haven't left my bedroom in 3 weeks, to I'm going to climb Everest. That's not reasonable. But, finding something that gives you a little joy and doing that one thing might be enough to help you then find another thing and another thing. So trying to break the routine. And it doesn't matter how you do it. I mean, I always notice that when I don't teach my fitness classes, I have a drop in my mental well-being. That pretty much, I would say that's universal. Unless you don't enjoy being a fitness instructor, but I have to admit, I do meet fitness instructors and wonder why are you a fitness instructor if you don't like it, because it's definitely one of those things that you can't fake, and people notice when you're faking it, and they don't like going to your lessons because you're dull, because you're miserable, and they don't want to spend time. So, but I've got a colleague at the moment who is recovering. Well, she's not. She is still under radiotherapy at the moment, but she's still teaching because she needs that for her own well-being. Because it keeps her in a positive mental state of mind. So she's, even though she's really struggling and she's got radiation burns and it physically hurts her to wear a sports bra at the moment, she's still teaching because she wants to. She has finally said she's going to have to take a little break because it was getting a bit too much, and she did manage to break her foot as well. So she's having good luck at the moment, but still trying to teach because the benefit it brings to her well-being, rather than just sitting at home being miserable and not doing anything. So yeah. I enjoy playing on my computer.
Yeah.
Getting lost in a different world for a few hours. Always wonderful to clear the head. And just going out and seeing friends. Those are my things, really.
Yeah, I think that's all very. I mean, as you both know, for me, getting out and doing stuff in the outdoors is very much my escape. In between, reading and so forth, and
I would say reading is a big one for you.
Reading is my day-to-day stabilizer, but being able to get out and do stuff in the fresh air is absolutely critical to me. And going on holiday for the week with what has still left me with a bit of a high even now. Over a week later, I still feel good because
I'm not surprised. I was extremely jealous of that whole scenario.
Well, yeah, it was lovely, going.
But also very happy for you, obviously.
But I really enjoyed my week away, and that has fundamentally put me into just a better place than I was before. Because obviously, with various things going on in other ways, I was in something of a bad place for a little while. And so being able to get away and just spend time with my best friend and sort of drink nice wine and explore bits of northern Spain was lovely.
Why, Simon? What bad things have happened?
That's an After Dark episode where we can swear a lot more and use the word.
Simon, get off the fence. Say what you really mean.
No. So, and obviously, going back to mental health there, or mental health, whatever it is, there's not just the things that you can do that help you. And I think people shouldn't be afraid of knowing what their grounding activity is that helps them. But I think, Joey.
I just wanted to say, on the extent of everyone having mental health, I think it's important to understand as well that there are mental health equivalents to a cold. So not everything is schizophrenia.
Yes, absolutely. Yes.
So just because you are suffering with some form of mental illness does not mean that it's something that is going to be there in 2 weeks' time. You say sometimes you need a duvet day. I took one the other day and I was with you two. And I was like, not going to work today. Nope, it's not happening. Because I'd had such a dreadful couple of weeks. So I just needed the one day off to just not be at work.
There was wine. It was lovely.
So yes, so not all mental health is a massive thing. So just getting to a point to be able to say that you are struggling a little bit this week and people not think, oh God, they're going to get sent to the loony bin because they're struggling with the mental health. Because I think before, everyone just sort of dealt with it without talking about it and suffered. And then you only ever really talked about it when someone finally snapped and ended up being committed. That is the old way of dealing with mental health, is that ignore it until they've lost their ability to function. And then we lock them in a room and then we electrocute them for a bit. and then they don't get better, so we keep them locked in a room. And we don't do that anymore, which is nice.
No,
We
quite.
let people talk about the fact that they need a bit of time. They might need their workload at work reducing just a little bit, or they might need a little bit of help, or just an extra an hour longer on their break just to help them. It's not all big things. Mental health can also just be little things. That's just what I wanted.
Yeah, and I think Joey sort of makes a good point there, and I think it's also important to acknowledge that it's still not, especially in all workplaces, a fully accepted situation. Like particularly if you get into higher pressure roles, you'll find that people still don't want to talk about their mental health for fear of being thought as incapable of sort of dealing with the pressures of that role or that's involved with that job, which, like as Joey sort of just said, it's not. We should be sort of acknowledging the fact that people sometimes just need a day to catch themselves back up, and instead of allowing that person to or enabling that person to end up at a position where they do end up burning out, and then instead of them just needing a day to bring themselves back up to a good positive mental health position, instead of that happening, they actually fall so far down that it does end up being something quite serious that they then need to go on to get proper support and help with, like a diagnosed proper mental health illness. And that's not a good thing to sort of enable people to do. And we need to promote it a bit more in the workplace is something that is acceptable to talk about, even in those higher positions and those higher roles that traditionally you sort of would be frowned upon, that you sort of took another day off, like I'm sure we all have or can think of friends in those positions that are sort of in higher directorate style roles where saying, I need a day off because stuff's got to me lately. I think it's not a good thing to sort of just pretend that that's not a thing for everybody, and it is. It is. And everybody has a different capacity for it as well.
Yeah, and I think there's no harm in realising when you've come to the end of your capacity.
Yeah, I think I rambled a bit, sorry.
Yes.
And so obviously, a big part of this, and you've both mentioned COVID there and various things, people becoming more open about talking about things, and certainly in my own business, we're very keen on making space for people to talk about things. And there's that whole thing of creating awareness of mental health, mental ill health, and so forth. But I certainly know there's something you brought to my attention the other day, actually, Joey, was that sometimes people seem to be, for want of a better term, hijacking that kind of awareness for a not entirely moral purpose, perhaps? I don't know if that's the right way of putting it.
Well, yes. So we live in a world filled with influencers, and some influencers are famous because they create content that is amusing or clever or beautiful. They're great artists, singers, influential business people have created a product, politicians. They are doing something. But there is always a way of making money from things. And those people who are perhaps not so brilliant at creating their own content do seem to have a trend of jumping on to awarenesses, and it's always under the guise of promoting whatever it is. It could be mental health, as we're talking about mental health, but there'll be people doing stuff during Pride, there'll be people doing stuff during any other celebratory or awareness period. So instead of creating content that is something they've produced, they've just said, it's mental health awareness week, here is what you should do. And I think if you are just genuinely promoting awareness, that's fantastic. But there always then seems to be and I'm in partnership with Jenny's Jewelry, who are giving away an awareness mental health necklace. And you have the opportunity to win this necklace if you write into me with 400 different messages about how brilliant this necklace is and what you've done with your mental health. And I don't suggest that doesn't contribute something to awareness, because lots of people who necessarily wouldn't have known are going to find out about it. If they're sharing their stories in the comments, that could be a very positive experience for a lot of people. It could be very cathartic. But at some point, someone has jumped onto this thing and is trying to also make money. And ultimately, people will try and make money out of anything. But I don't know whether that's necessarily morally correct. I also think you do have people who share their stories of when they've had depressive episodes, which I think is always good, but somehow there's been a camera pointing at them with good light at the time, and they've happened to have taken a photo of them in tears, but it's beautifully lit. And I'm always like, are you doing this because you actually had a problem, or are you doing this because you see this as a way of getting attention? But I think that is a bigger issue than than that. But there are also lots and lots, as with Pride, there are lots and lots of businesses that are now using mental health awareness as a way to, as I said, to sell their product. So, the one I'm looking at the moment, that's a cod liver oil tablet for mindfulness.
A cod liver oil tablet for mindfulness.
Yes.
Are we serious?
Cod are very mindful, I'm sure, but
it's an omega-3 fish oil tablet, so it will be cod liver oil, because that's probably the easiest way of getting it. And you could win a year's supply of mindfulness capsules or omega-3 fish oil.
Well, that is people blatantly jumping on the bandwagon, essentially,
yes,
isn't it?
But it's a way of monetizing awareness, which doesn't remove awareness, but I think it sort of cheapens it and takes you away from what you should be focusing on, is the story attached to it, rather than, I can get a free thing.
Yeah, I feel it is abundantly clear the difference between somebody jumping on the bandwagon of something and somebody genuinely wanting to share a story or share an important awareness. I think there's probably quite a few companies that do it very, very cleverly at the same time. But yeah, they just seem like really blatantly obvious and fake, like you sort of mentioned earlier. There are certain influencers out there that would sort of just post a photo of themselves crying, going, or seemingly to cry, and sort of say, it's mental health awareness. And that strikes me as just blatantly very much more, I just want the attention, and I'm jumping on the fact that this is going to be a hotter topic right now, as opposed to somebody genuinely sharing an experience or story. Because you in that moment of poor mental health or mental health illness, you're not going to pull out your phone and your camera to take a selfie. That's the last thing I suppose there's possibly some people that might, if they're genuinely going through something, because it might be sort of something.
I genuinely
something
think
that they
we're
used
at
to.
the point that people probably do that.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. There's
so
probably a situation
in their behaviour.
Sort of taking that photograph and
everything must be documented sort of behaviour, which a lot of people do.
But it might also be one of the sort of I'm trying to think of the right words. Not triggers.
It could also be a coping mechanism.
Coping mechanism. Thank you.
In the same way,
mechanism.
We're delving into sort of the limbic part of your brain here, that lizard.
Well, I was also wondering before, when we kept sort of going on about monetizing everything, I thought, oh God, are we going to end up down a capitalism sort of what's wrong with society sort of rabbit hole?
Yes.
We don't have long enough for that.
No. No, I think there might be a coping mechanism thing there for at least for some people. I mean, I'm not going to go down the rabbit hole of the commercialization thing, because in the same way, when you're feeling a little bit down, you send 10 messages to your friends going hi, 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 hi. You get a response, gives you that little hit of dopamine, you feel slightly better. Especially if you're having a bit of a bad day. So maybe for some of them, taking a photograph and sending it to others is a way for them to cope with it. But I do take your point. Talking about, whilst I think it's great people are piping up about anxiety and whatnot on the internet, and it used to be very much a sort of a bit of a taboo. And certainly in the UK, things like NHS waiting lists are tremendously long. I think even before COVID, it was something like 8 to 10 weeks to see someone. It's now much, much more. And one of our prime ministers in the last few years, I don't know, how long ago was Theresa May? Was that 3 or 4 prime ministers ago? She once said that the real problem was about stigma, not about money, and then promptly cut money to make it harder for people to get access to services. I'm not even going to try and discuss that one, but I don't know. I think there is definitely a point there to be made about when your followers and your money depends on keeping people scrolling through. Your motives might then become suspect. But I do think some of them seem genuinely genuinely chuffed, I suppose, to be to be able to help people. But you might be right. Maybe there are others for whom this is just click chasing, the sensationalized headlines about it all. Or one you said about earlier on about labeling everything. You can't just go chucking those labels about willy-nilly, because that might not necessarily be accurate. It's a tricky balance, though, isn't it? There are obviously some who are offering genuine help and support, and there are others who might end up going down slightly odd rabbit holes of cod liver oil and so forth.
I think it's also, and it just struck me as something that might be worth mentioning. I think it also possibly is just how some people think that you should respond nowadays as well. Like, I think there's some people that won't necessarily see the inappropriateness in what they've done there, they'll think that is the best way to help people, is to take that selfie of themselves, like pretending to be, or reliving an experience maybe that they've been through, and they might assume that is the best way to help because of the way we are conditioned as a society around social media nowadays. So there's that aspect of it, I suppose, as well. It could go on all day.
There's also probably a slight irony that for some of those people who are doing it as a coping mechanism because they're struggling with their mental health, that actually possibly the largest source of their mental health is their activity on social media.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, quite possibly.
And therefore you've made just your own negative feedback loop.
This is why social media can be a very dangerous thing.
Yes.
So to wind up this section, I think
you're holding your wine while winding up.
My mental health is being led at the moment.
Is contingent on wine.
My mental health is contingent on wine and access to decent.
I'm not sure that's the message we should be saying.
No, I was going to say, if you put that into the podcast, you need to put a note in there going a disclaimer going, alcohol is not a healthy way to deal with mental health.
It's correct
not. For nobody it is. For nobody.
It is a depressant, unless it's tequila.
I know, I like tequila.
Alcohol is not a good thing to consume if you
Alcohol allows me to be honest with my friends.
No, it doesn't.
No, it doesn't. It's true. Your love and support allow me to do that.
Should only...
And then
alcohol,
several hours, several years.
Important, relevant to what we were talking about.
Go on, say something relevant and important, Sam.
Well, alcohol should only be consumed when you are in a positive state of mental health.
Yes.
For the reason Joey mentioned before, as pretty much all alcohol is a depressant.
I kind of just wanted to draw this section to sort of a place. Is that discussing mental health is obviously going to be quite complex and it's deeply personal, and as probably with the next topic, disclosing the fact that you might be struggling can be a real problem for people. But on your point about the stuff online, Joey, I think that as with anything online, we should take everything with a little grain of salt and a certain healthy skepticism. But I think used thoughtfully, it could be a real force for good.
Certainly, yeah. I mean, but again, with everything used correctly, a force. Well, I'm probably not anthrax, but most things, a force for good when used correctly. It's unfortunate that people will always find a way of trying to take advantage of something and not think about the consequences it has on other people, which I think is the danger I was trying to allude to, is that you haven't thought about the consequences of other people, of your actions when it comes to, especially when it comes to talking about mental health.
Yes, absolutely.
Yes, that was a good sound clip.
Hot on the heels of Mental Health Day was National Coming Out Day. So I did check. It was actually started in the United States in 1988, which was not a bad year for some people.
1988 was very important to me, yes, because that's when I was born. Yeah, I have nothing else to say about that.
And you immediately gained self-awareness.
And it was immediately homosexual. So yes, 1988. It started in the United States, the 11th of October. It was a group called the NCOD who called it the National Coming Out Day, and was kicked off in New Mexico by a psychologist called Robert Eichberg and also Jean O'Leary. Editor Simon here once again, and I'm so very sorry. I managed to get some of my notes a little bit mixed up at this point in the show, so let's see if I can correct it. So, National Coming Out Day was first observed on October 11th, 1988. It was created by both Robert Eichberg, who was a psychiatrist from New Mexico, and Gino Leary, who was the openly lesbian political leader of a group called the National Gay Rights Advocates in Los Angeles. And both of them are probably equally responsible for creating this lovely day. It did start actually in, like I say, in Las Vegas, and it was initially run by the West Hollywood offices of that National Gay Rights Advocates group, with support from 18 states and getting lots of national media attention. It moved to New Mexico in its second year, so that's where I got a little bit confused. So apologies for that, and back to the show. And it sort of then, grew quite significantly after that. But it is, I suppose, observed, if you will, in the US and in the UK, in Ireland, in Switzerland, the Netherlands, lots of other countries. And so the initial idea, I suppose, behind this is about creating an atmosphere of support and help for people, whether you're coming out as gay or lesbian, as bi, as trans or non-binary or pan or any other kind of sexual or gender identity. The idea is that living openly as who you are is an incredibly important part of creating an authentic society. And going back again to your mental health, being able to experience who you are openly and supportively and non-judged is an incredibly important part of being a human being. And I guess that kind of atmosphere of silence and ignorance often breeds significant problems for people, no matter what their sort of gender or sexual identity is. And so by creating at least a celebratory day where we say today is to celebrate anyone who's had not necessarily the strength or the courage, because it is an incredibly hard thing to disclose, but has come out of the closet or is wanting to come out of the closet, and say you are okay to be yourself. It is normal.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, you can't see people nodding on a podcast.
Yes, it is very important to wear safe. Obviously, I think we need to.
Yes, obviously, if you are in one of the countries where it is illegal, I'm so sorry, the British Empire has a lot to answer for. That is one of the things. Then maybe not. But if you
maybe we should go around recapturing everywhere with flags again.
No, because given the current state of the fact that we live on Turf Island, I'm not sure we really want to export our current views on people's identities.
We're not doing that well.
We can't even build 2 pieces of metal rail from one city to another.
Yes.
No,
and also, this is not an episode of, well, there's your problem, so...
Yes.
So talking about coming out, I'm not going to ask you both to tell me your coming out stories. You're welcome to tell me if you want to. But if you could go back in time to before you came out, what would you tell yourself?
It gets better. It's all right. You'll be fine. All the other horrible stereotypical things that everyone says, but because they were true for me, but they're just horribly cringy things. Because as I said earlier, you spend so much time worrying that people are going to somehow suddenly disown you, kick you out the house, not spend time with you, or your friends will call you names and everything else. And none of that happened. I got the odd weird comment, but that was mostly just sort of curiosity mixed with ignorance rather than anything else. So yeah, it's not as scary as you think it's going to be. But at the same time, I wouldn't have encouraged myself to come out sooner because, again, I'm not sure coming out at 8 would have been productive or useful because that would have been 1996.
It still amazes me that you had that awareness at that age.
I had that awareness at 5. I had that awareness at 3, if I'm honest. I had that awareness in preschool.
That breaks me.
Yeah, I have to admit, I don't think I was aware enough of myself before my teenage years to have come to that sort of conclusion. But certainly if I was to go back and speak to myself at the point where I was aware enough, but I wasn't yet out, I think I'd just tell myself to not worry as much and just seize it a bit more, take those opportunities a bit earlier than I did.
But that could have drastically different consequences.
I know, I could have been a much better person.
Or it could have been much worse.
What would you tell yourself if you could go back, Sam?
Nothing, I'm perfect. No. I don't think I would tell myself anything, to be honest with you, because I don't know what would be helpful, quite honestly. I struggled with coming out, but I didn't have a negative experience. I wasn't that aware of labels as such, I suppose, a lot younger. I mean, I see the differences with what Joey says to my experiences, I can look back retrospectively and identify earlier with a label than I did at the time, but I don't think me going back in time and going, oh, by the way, you're gay would help at all, because it would just raise more questions for me, and not necessarily any sort of questions that I would find positive or helpful. So yeah, I don't know. So I'm going to end it there because I don't have anything else to say really. Someone please take over, otherwise I'm going to ramble.
So I think coming out is an incredibly personal decision that does involve you having to weigh up your need for authenticity and support against, as we've said, the potential risks to your safety.
Definitely.
And so understanding and reflecting on that and what's safest and best for you might be part of that journey. I think my own experiences of coming out were somewhat rocky at times, but giving people time to process it, I think, is useful. But also, I think you need to own it and not let people tell you, oh, it's just a phase. Or try and convince you that you have to live a different life because you'll be very upset and lonely if you live your authentic self. It's very much a case of remembering that your own worth as a person is not defined by your people's reaction to who you are, and you deserve to live as your true self. And that's not just for your gender identity, your sexual identity, but also for things like understanding that you're autistic or ADHD, or you have OCD, or that you like the color purple better than the color green. All of these things are part of who you are, and you deserve to live in an open way that accepts that. But also, I think going back to disclosing and to coming out, if you don't feel safe or you don't feel ready, that's valid. Don't ever feel bullied into saying it until you're ready. And you can still live quietly and explore your identity without necessarily disclosing it to the wider world. But I guess for me, the thing which I've tried to tell people when I've helped them in the past is to find their own space, their own time. There are lots of organisations out there that can give you guidance and advice and support. If you're in the UK, the LGBT switchboard are very good. You can telephone them anytime, and I'll put them in the notes. In the United States, for example, there are people like the Trevor Project who have a really good sort of like handbook on this kind of stuff. And even the Human Rights Commission have some quite useful bits and pieces on their website. Or if you know someone who's been through this as well and you trust them, talk to them. Most people are willing to share their experience of coming out, I think.
Yeah, I think that's one of the beautiful things about the world that we live in now, is that people are generally much more aware of this and what it means to people. And you mentioned sort of owning your own sort of story and your own coming out process there, and it sort of made me think of something that happened to me when I came out. And it's not a horrible story at all or anything. It's not traumatic. I didn't find it traumatic anyway. But I sort of came out to my parents and I told them, and one thing or another. And my mum asked me, do you want me to tell any of the rest of the family? And I said, no, not right now. I'm sort of not ready. And the first thing she did was, after finishing that conversation, was phone her sister and tell her that I was a homosexual. So fortunately, she had an amazing response, because my auntie is in the arts industry. So she just responded with, oh, finally, someone with colour in the family. So that was very positive. But I mean, I've obviously heard this like third hand, but it struck me as something that's quite interesting, because obviously I did say I didn't want anyone to know. And then my mum, probably to link back to what we were saying before about women talking about things much more openly to deal with their mental health, that was something that she needed to discuss with somebody that she trusted. So obviously that was her sister. So interesting there how that...
I would think as well, it's not all coming outs have to be, put on the side of the house with a big banner. You don't have to have fireworks and a display. You don't have to go to Pride and wear pink. You could just be honest the next time a question is asked of you, or you could just be unashamed about walking into a gay bar and talking to someone. It doesn't have to be a big announcement. You could just change how you decide you're going to behave. And that could be your coming out. Doesn't have to be because you don't owe it to anyone to tell any people. You don't owe it to people to tell them that. It's quite frankly where you stick your genitals with someone else's genitals is none of anyone else's business. And if you want to keep it that way, keep it that way. As long as you're happy and you talk to people about it when you feel like you want to. There's a difference between wanting to talk about it and feeling like you can't.
Yes.
And that's the big difference. Like if you don't want to talk about it with people at work, don't. But don't. It's not healthy that you should feel that you can't and you want to. There's a big difference.
Yes. Yes. Won't it be a wonderful thing in many ways when you don't have to come out anymore?
Yeah, that would be lovely.
You can just sort of say, this is my boyfriend, this is my girlfriend, this is my... what's the correct terminology for somebody that wouldn't want to be a boyfriend or partner? I guess that's non-gender specific, isn't it?
I think partner's a good term. Yeah.
Yeah. This is my partner, and people just go, yeah, cool, that's great to meet them. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or one of my partners.
Yeah, or one of my partners.
We're very supportive of polyamory here, aren't we? So.
Supportive of everything, because guess what? It's your life and you should be able to live it the way you want to live it, so long as you're not hurting other people.
I think that's a caveat for most things. I mean, I hope it is anyway.
Yeah, that's for the crazy people.
Which is not a term we want to use when we're also talking about mental health.
No, you can edit that bit out. Do edit that bit out.
Yes, sure. So, before we wrap up, there was something which I found the other day, which might be helpful to any ADHD people listening. I think Watts mentioned this previously when I was moving house. There is a quite a useful little AI generator called Goblin.tools, where you can sort of type in a thing you need to do, and it'll help break it down into a list to help you sort of try and figure out what it is you need to do. So, for example, Sam, give me something you need to do.
I need to build a curved skirting board.
I put build a shelf. I knew it was going to be build something.
So I'm going to type in I need to build skirting boards.
No, curved. It needs to be curved.
So gather the necessary materials, measure and mark lengths, cut the boards to the appropriate length, sand down rough edges, apply adhesive or nails. Repeat the process for each section, fill any holes or gaps, sand them down, apply primer and undercoat, apply the paint or finish, allow the paint to dry, clean up the workspace.
Assuming I'm going to paint them. How does it do this?
Or
is
desired
AI?
finish. It is AI, yes. But it's quite useful in terms of helping to break down bigger tasks. Because I don't know about you, but sometimes I struggle with starting things because I know this is one thing that will then turn into 3 things, that will turn into a dozen things, that will turn into 4 dozen things. And I can't keep track of that many things. And I have to write them all down. But actually, it might give me a starting point for cleaning the kitchen. Follow the list.
I like this. I mean, it does not know how to build curved skirting boards, but sure.
But it's giving you some ideas behind setting up your list.
Yeah. Can I break them down? Let's see what it does here. Oh, this is interesting when you tell it to magic the goals. This could... Right. Once you actually... This is a rather amazing tool.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, even if you don't have ADHD.
Yes.
Just, wow. This is where AI is like...
So tell us
incredible.
what you've got into here.
I put in I want to retire early.
Okay.
And it comes out with, as you would sort of maybe expect, set a specific financial goal for early retirement, determine the amount of money needed to live, create a budget, develop a savings plan, blah blah. But then, like the first one, set a specific financial goal for early retirement. You click on that to sort of magic it into more, and it really does identify the desired age of retirement, determine the financial requirements for lifestyle, consider factors such as living expenses, travel plans, or the desired activities. So it's really quite impressive. Go Goblin.tools. What else do they have? Formalizer. Turn the spicy thoughts into classy ones, or vice versa. Enter your text here. Oh, okay. Turn the spicy thoughts into classy ones.
The classy ones.
Oh, I like this. Oh, this is... Have you ever seen those things online? The formalizer one's really good. Have you ever seen those things online where it's like the reply to the email wants to be Karen, I'm not doing this?
Yes.
It's that.
Oh, has it got that
turns
kind
it into something that you could email.
Oh, brilliant. Goblin.tools. It's actually one of the more useful AIs I've come across. I've used it a few times recently, actually, just sort of help me set out things I need to do and delve deeper into creating a task list, which works quite well. So
I put in the formalizer, fuck off, I'm not doing this, and make my text more professional, convert spicy level 3, comes out with, I'm sorry, but I'm unable to assist with this. Quite boring, but let's what if we increase the spiciness? Who is that? Oh, this is just my new favourite website, I think. They have an app.
So we've been talking for a while now. Is there anything anybody wants to say in final thoughts?
Yeah, look after yourself. If you are struggling, try and reach out to somebody that you think is going to listen. Or ask Google for some help. I'm sure Google will help you, direct you to some good charities. That
resources are available, and they will be available.
All the search engines are available, but Google's quite good. But yeah, don't suffer in silence or think that nobody wants to listen, because people are out there. They are willing to listen. Sometimes you just have to keep pushing on and find that person that's willing to listen and willing to help and talk to, and you will find that person.
And it just remains for me to say thank you to both of my two co-hosts for joining me, to remind you that we'll put links in the show notes for everything we've talked about today, and to wish you all a very pleasant weekend. We'll speak to you all again soon. Thanks again. Bye for now.
Bye.
Bye.
While we're waiting for Simon to edit that, we shall break for advertisements. And today, our sponsor is HelloFresh. And HelloFresh is a meal delivery service that conveniently delivers your meals prepackaged and half prepared.
It's either HelloFresh or it's Sky. And if it's Sky, we both have to then talk about a television show that neither of us have watched. And how great the acting is, because
I've come in at points there. You're talking about HelloFresh. We don't advertise on this podcast. It just costs me money.
We should advertise on this podcast.
It's a free podcast with no adverts. It just costs me about £20 a month.
Oh, I didn't know it cost you that much. Joey's having a little fit there. And we've lost his audio as well. What the timing?
It costs you £20 a month.
Well, so the hosting is about a tenner, and then there's like licensing fees for things like music. There's a certain amount I have to pay for my editing software, things like that.
You mean?
But I think it's worth it because we
your
get
editing software.
I just no comment.
Not while Craig's in the room.
And the dish ran away with the spoon.